What's up, guys? My name is Micah Miller. You're watching the Underground Podcast. In this episode, we have Steve Cherewaty on. He is the founder of Abacus, and he's got a lot of interesting stuff to share. Hope you enjoy. Well, hey, Steve, thanks for coming on the show real quick. For those of you who don't know, Steve's the founder of Abacus. I believe you started that back in 2018. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah. The first legs of it started coming out in 2018. We were incorporated January of 2020. So
Awesome. Cool. And
perfect year to get started.
yeah, it's a crazy year, to say the least. So what got you started with it? Like, why did you start the journey of Abacus? Kind of tell us what was going through your mind at the time and kind of the inspiration behind it.
Yeah. So actually, I had just gotten fired from a really good job, which I consider to be a really good job. Never mind that it had I was commuting 3 hours a day. It wasn't really something that I loved doing, but I loved the company because it was a spaceship manufacturer. It was basically, and I was in aerospace as a safety engineer, and I worked at a really large, out here in the Everett area, a really large aircraft manufacturer, and was a safety person there, and then got the opportunity to go to this really cool, spaceship factory. I used to tell people, like, when I was at the other company, it's as close as I can get to working in a spaceship factory. And then I got a job opportunity to work in an actual spaceship factory. It was really great. I loved the people. I loved being there. I loved everything except the job. I didn't really love being in safety. It just wasn't really my thing, because at my level, a lot of it was regulatory.
Sure.
And I'm not the kind of person who just wants to have his head in regulations. I don't love that kind of thing. My brain is more, I'm more right-brained than that. And anyway, I got canned from that job for basically just telling people I would never go get like these different certifications that they really wanted me to do, and so I got canned as a result of that. Good work, Steve. And but what it ended up doing is I had this amazing, miraculous thing happen on the way home, on the drive, on my 2-hour drive home. Is like all the fear just went away. I had always wanted to learn how to do 3D printing. I always wanted to learn how to do design and laser cutting. I had all these crafts, all these really neat things that I wanted to learn how to do. And suddenly the fear just went away. And I gave myself permission, essentially, to just go ahead and do all of it. And I started, I kind of went into that as I was looking for jobs and doing the other stuff. I started a YouTube channel where I was just tinkering all the time. And I also started the Instagram account, the Facebook account, all those things of this. And what ended up happening, the way that Abacus came about, is that people would contact me through these various channels, and they'd ask, how do you do that? How did you do that? How did you learn? Can you teach me? Can you make stuff for me? And it was like, well, this is kind of cool. I mean, I'd love to be able to do this as a living. But it occurred to me that so many people have great skills and hobbies, amazing hobbies that you just, one person I worked with actually at the other company, builds actual hydrofoil racing boats out of carbon fiber, in his garage.
Wow.
And everybody's got RC things and drone, they're building their own drones. They're doing all these neat things. And I'm like, God, how do you get into that? And so anyway, I started kind of asking around and seeing if people would be interested in a marketplace. And Abacus really took form with the idea of a two-sided market like Etsy, but instead of selling products, they would be selling skills, and it would be live. You would be finding people in person in your town that, hey, Micah knows how to build drones from scratch. Basically, you just get these parts, and you can meet with him. He'll show you how to do it. That way, it takes the whole YouTube part out of it. You're not just watching videos, you're actually interacting with somebody.
Right.
And asking them questions in real time, and cutting through a lot of the garbage and the learning curve that most people struggle with, because I wasted a lot of time and a lot of materials learning things from videos when I first got started with this. So Abacus kind of moved along, and then of course COVID hit, and there's a few other intermediary parts here. I was accepted into the Founder Institute, in late 2019, and I went through their fall cohort, and I actually graduated. There was like 40 companies at first, and only 9 ended up surviving, and mine was one of them. And we went through. I got incorporated, and then COVID hit. And it was a perfect opportunity for Abacus, instead of being sort of a dating app, because that's really like the configuration that it was. It was almost like a dating app.
Yeah, like a meet and match kind of marketplace.
Meet and match. This is the hobby. Except it was like craft and hobby and art based. And so it went from there, instead of find somebody in your own hometown, to, hey, we can open this up to virtual. And you can have these virtual sort of experiences where you want to learn a particular type of art, you want to learn some sort of a craft or a skill, you can actually get on a Zoom and learn this. And so the artist, the maker, the crafter, the guide of whatever it is, puts their thing up on the Abacus platform, and then people on the other side of the market go and they find it and they sign up for it. That's in a nutshell how this all started. It was just me kind of taking this journey of, I want to learn how to do cool shit, and then moving with it and building a platform that people can meet each other through.
Sure. So it kind of started out with you just exploring kind of that itch that you had to just make things and make cool stuff. And then it turned into you connecting others, and like you said, kind of like a dating app. And now it's kind of morphing into this Etsy, almost like call it like Amazon type platform, where you kind of plug in and you find what you need, and it's more like a marketplace rather than a social type platform. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's a straight up marketplace for skills and for events now. We actually have made a huge pivot toward corporate events. And so, like, if you're a manager of a team of 10, 12, 20 people, you can actually go on the Abacus platform. You can find like dog training, DIY dog biscuits with like famous brands like Seattle Barkery. And so people can find these types of things. You can find people who can help you do like professional smartphone photos, things that people don't usually get a chance. They don't sit down long enough to look at all the different settings on their phones.
Sure.
And have somebody walk you through it as part of an employee engagement activity.
That's awesome.
There's also, we're looking at like wine tastings and all kinds of other things that if you manage a group, you can go on there and find it.
Cool. I want to get more into the corporate events, but first, I wanted to ask you. So there's kind of this new. It's a fairly new idea, and I think it's called the gig economy, and I think it kind of got kickstarted maybe in the like 2010s ish, and I really think it came about when people started noticing wage stagnating, and having a job you weren't really like you were making a living, but you weren't really going anywhere. And so what I see the gig economy as is just people kind of being really just self-employed in a virtual way. You see things like Upwork. There's one called Fiverr, and it's kind of like this almost a labor/skill marketplace. And I really see Abacus kind of playing into that. And tell us, how do you think the Abacus business model kind of is boding well with that gig economy type scenario playing out right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say, Uber really kind of kicked things off with some of this, because it became about the side hustle, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing on the side? Now, there have been people before who always had side hustles, right? There's entrepreneurial people. Etsy also was part of that. If you've got art skills and stuff, you can make these products and sell it. As far as the big platforms, that's kind of what I feel like really got started. I actually had my own paintings. I'm an artist and a musician. And like I said, I'm very right-brained. I'm left-handed and right-brained. So I'm about like big ideas, and I don't do like details. Like, it's a terrible thing to say as a founder, but I need people to help me with that, because For me, I think in colors and shapes. And I actually had an Etsy account, and I sold my paintings on Etsy back in like 2007, right when they were first coming on. It looked like Craigslist. It was really sparse, like really just text. And you could put like a picture in here. They were terrible quality because it was like a 1.2 megapixel camera was like the best you could do. So old stuff, but that was really the beginning of these big platforms that were you have these two-sided markets where people could take these gigs on, and hey, I'll have my listing up there when I'm able to, but then I'm going to close it down, I'm going to shut it off, and I need to have, and it's not always about being self-employed, right? Some of these people do have employers. They work full-time jobs, and they're also doing things on the side to make more money, saving for their college, their kids' college, savings account, like special vacations, things like that.
Sure.
People kind of started off, and I think it's turned more into the self-employment type thing, where it's like, you know what, I really don't want to work at a big institutional job where I have to commute 3 hours to work anymore. It's costing. I remember my wife and I, we were talking about this, and we were both simultaneously getting more and more pissed off every time we kind of talked. It was like, I work so I can afford the gas to get to work, afford the clothes that I need to wear to keep up my image at work, and then the gas to get back to eat. And it's like, it's
a hamster wheel.
All this extra money that I thought I was going to make, I'm not making because I'm spending it just getting to and from work and then keeping up this like facade. And I think people are just ditching the BS now and going, you know what? I never want to do that institutional crap anyway. I'd really like to do what I want to do. And now we have platforms to do it, like Abacus and Fiverr and Upwork. You can work when you want. You can turn it off when you don't. That's the great part about that.
Yeah, that's why I like Abacus so much. It's like, there's Etsy, there's all these other ones that we've mentioned, but I feel that Abacus is kind of hitting on a different niche. Kind of like you said, those creators and those artists. It gives them a platform to stand on and turn their skill and passion into, they could potentially make a living off of it if they went all in on it potentially. And that's what I think is really cool about Abacus. So I'm hoping big things come for you. I think they will, but it's cool to see things develop like that.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, the hook with Abacus is that these are live sessions.
Yeah.
We can provide the Zoom account if a guide signs up, because we've got the Abacus guides are really the people who are like the hosts. A guide can sign up. If they don't have a paid unlimited Zoom account, we'll give them one. They pay a subscription to be a part of that and to use the marketplace, but also we can provide them with the Zoom account, and it's unlimited. It's live. So when we have one person up there that does mindful arts, and mindful arts is kind of this process by which you become more mindful of yourself by doing these artistic type things. You're expressing yourself, and it's really kind of a fascinating process that Kathy takes people through for this. But she can do 1 hour's worth of work and sign up with Google or with Amazon Prime or whatever. If a manager wants to go find that and do a session with Kathy for her entire work group, all it costs Amazon is $350, to do that for an hour, to do this really neat thing that her employees would really appreciate, or his employees would appreciate, either one. And Kathy gets to make $350 in an hour just doing a session.
And you're referring to the corporate events, correct?
This is on the corporate events. There's also a consumer-facing side. Where a group, she can accumulate a group of 5, 10, 15 people just who want to take these things individually, and it doesn't have a flat rate associated with it. It's got a per person. So
right. So how
just want to do that, it's $15 a person.
Awesome. So how did that develop? Like, I remember, I don't know exactly how the corporate side developed, because at first it was more of like a individual to individual. But how did you kind of dial that in, and what was kind of the light bulb moment where it's like, oh, I can, this could be a business to consumer or business to business type model as well?
So we had somebody from Google reach out, and they were interested in one of the listings. That was really the start, and that was just before the holidays. But really, the thing that kind of pushed everything over the edge was where we were looking at it, going, "This is a real opportunity." It's kind of a fun story. I was over at the Seattle Barkery, filming for a video walkthrough, and while I was there, the owner of the Barkery got an email from a large company that was just curious, like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a live webinar?" And it was like, that was when the light bulb went off, and I was like, "This is exactly what we're doing now." Like, let's just turn it, let's just change it. So we kind of took over the conversation, and they were already part of Abacus. The Barkery had already signed on to Abacus. They had already gotten everything going. And so all I did was we put a listing up and said, "Here's what it is." And we did a basic count of, here's how many employees are going to be watching. We put it up there, and sure enough, the company said, "Absolutely, let's do it." And they've scheduled it out. So basically just doing a little restructuring and seeing that, a large company would be interested in this, and people are interested in corporate events, because right now it's big. Corporate events are huge because you've got everybody working from home right now. And, the employees, it's not the same when you're just doing like little quizzes with your manager. To have somebody come on and do something really neat from a brand that is well recognized, like the Barkery, that's actually very unique. And so, and the companies are willing to pay for that.
Yeah. And I think it is important too, because, we're developing this new work from home, stay at home business model where all your employees, if possible, are working out of their, living room or their home office. And so, back before that, you had, birthday parties and holiday parties and all these different things. And so there's really this need for corporations to, have extra things for their employees to do, give them extra meaning for being a part of that company, other than just, pay and benefits. And so that's what's really interesting to me is, there is a demand there, and you kind of just fell into it. It's great.
Right. No, it really took nothing on my part. It was really sort of the universe, if you will, just kind of saying, "Here you go, try this." And so now we have like 7 listings up that are corporate event listings. And by the end of the month, actually by the end of next month, I'm sure there'll be dozens. Because we're finding that, again, the work from home model is so amazing, because first of all, wine tastings, who would have done wine tastings at work, right? Nobody has to drive when you're at home.
Right.
You can all do little wine tastings in your own little kits that these companies are more than happy. I was just talking to a vintner yesterday who said most of these winemakers are now starting to transfer all their 750 milliliter bottles down to 250 for samples, and they're sending them out as kits to all these. So we're getting them on Abacus too, and it's like, we want to be able, if you want to do wine tastings, you can do that. I actually know, and this is kind of an interesting thing, I happen to know the trainer for Dubs, so UW mascot.
Okay.
She actually has access to Dubs, and she said, I can do a regular dog training where I use like a regular stunt dog for this, but people are home with their pets too, right? So it's like you can actually follow along. You can follow along in this really neat thing where you're either doing a session with Dubs and Annalisa, or you're doing with Annalisa and just her stunt dog for a little less, since Dubs is actually like a brand. But if you wanted a celebrity dog to kind of lead your team, you can get that, and you're right there with your animals. So it's kind of a neat thing. There's more.
It's perfect. Before you'd have to pack everybody into some warehouse type room, and everyone would have to pack their dog into the car, and everybody drives their car, and everybody's meeting at a certain time, and you gotta get through traffic. Now it's just kind of, you turn on your webcam and there you are, you're all together, and same as we're doing right now. Like, it's really cool how the economies of scale are more accessible to everybody, and it's making creative type people get together and making it a lot easier for them. Well, cool. Thanks for sharing that. So I think you and I were having a conversation. I can't remember what the context was, but you're telling me, getting started with a startup, you have to do things that don't scale. Tell us a little bit about that and your idea behind that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Paul Graham, I think, was, one of the people who I remember saying that early on, and I've kind of adopted that whenever you're looking for the opportunity and you're looking for these different channels. You can't just create, and this is something that I'm intimately familiar with now, and having done this for a couple of years and having built an MVP that's been up there for a couple of years and had very little traffic, at least very little organic traffic, is that just building the thing, having like the product out there, it's just not enough. You can't, and this is, I think, what every founder, every person who's in like a tech startup thinks they're just going to build this product and like people are just going to flock to it, right? Like, oh my God, here's this cool thing.
If you build it, they will come.
I'm going to use it now. Like, that's not it. Yeah, you have to scream it from the top of the hill and let as many people know. But as far as like doing things that don't scale, here's a perfect example. You got your two sides of the market and you're the platform in the middle. Instead of saying, hey, everybody just go to my website and you can find each other, that doesn't work. What I have to do is I have to go to this company and I have to go to this person, this guide, and I have to introduce them first and say, and actually I have to go to the company and say, what do you want? And they go, well, we want somebody to do, dog training. Okay, now I got to go find the dog trainer and I have to say, hey, are you willing to do this? Can you get on this platform? Yeah, I can do that. And then you kind of introduce them both through the platform. But I have to go to each of them individually. I can't start with the platform. Nobody knows what the platform is. It's an unknown. I'm it's a huge hit to the ego to be like, I'm nobody. I really, like, I don't have a thing yet. It's a thing. It's just people don't know about it. And I have to start going to each of the suppliers and each of the people who want those things, and I have to start getting them to hold hands.
Yeah.
It's really what the corporate events thing is such a big deal, because it just has more people involved on either side.
It adds demand to it. There's a supply and demand element to this. It's a marketplace, and you're having to fill the buy and the sell orders kind of, manually. So
and my buddy that I went through the Founder Institute with, Andy, he has a platform also. He's one of the only other tech startups north of Seattle, and it's called the SignTag, and it's for people who make signage. Signage for your buildings and things like that. And he knows just as well, like, you have to go to the sign makers and you have to go to the people who, and the sign wanters, and you have to go get them to talk, and you can't send them directly to your platform because people are just kind of shrugging their shoulders going, what's this? What am I supposed to do with this? And you have to get them to engage, but you have to engage them separately first. That's the stuff that doesn't scale. And then once it becomes a thing, you can start scaling.
So that's how you're going to scale Abacus, right? You just got to kind of manually piece it together until the wheels start turning on their own.
Right, and you need like customers that are actually bringing like a total lifetime value, like they're repeat customers. They have to say, oh man, say if I get a group from Amazon Prime to do a dog training session with Annalisa, and they really like it, then what I want them to do is next month I want them to come back to Abacus and go, what else is on here? What else can we do? Oh man, there's this really cool intro to laser cutting. It's $400. Let's check that out. A lot of their so that's, you get that scale by having them repeat, and then basically providing testimonials, case studies, things like that you can then put up on your website. And then that's when you start getting the engine running with like Google Ads, right? Is that you can start showing things. You can start making your website a little bit more clear about like, here's what we do, and here's the people who've really enjoyed our sessions. And then you just have to provide really good value, and make sure that people are enjoying it and they keep coming back. So that's pretty much it. So it's something that I love to do. I like helping people naturally, and I built the platform to help people. And until it scales, I get to help people more on a one-on-one basis, which is even better for me because that's where I really thrive.
Yeah, and you're doing a good job as a founder. You're heavily involved with this stuff. Like, as I understand, every session that's taking place, you're either popping in or you're helping lead the session, and you're there. You have a presence. So I think that's a huge deal. I think that kind of solidifies maybe some loyalty or at least building relationships with the makers and the customers. Like, oh yeah, I know the owner of this platform. It's even more exciting to be a part of it and support it and do stuff on it with the people on there. So I
Right.
think you're doing a good job in that aspect.
Well, thank you.
Um,
Yeah. My mission is to make sure that that both sides are getting value, that the guides are actually making money. So it's like in my best interest to make sure that they're doing well. And then also just keep introducing back and forth the suppliers to the demand. And so I tell them that all the time. Anything I can do to help them get going. And this is the best part because it's early on in the startup. I get to help one-on-one.
yeah,
It won't always be like this. So it's like I'm really enjoying it while I can.
that's cool. So you've talked about corporate events, and then obviously, one-on-one with makers and things like that. What other areas do you think Abacus could gain traction? Do you have any ideas on that?
I think, well, I mean, I guess categorically, we're looking at everything from those, like I mentioned before, like the wine tasting to dog training to even things that get really in depth technically, like drone building and 3D printing and modeling and all these different things. There's another. I do actually have another. I have two other businesses actually that aren't really doing anything right now, because I got the names and I put together like a really easy quick MVP so I could just illustrate to people. But I've got two other parts. One is called 3D Local, and the other is called Laser Local. And so what it is it's kind of that original idea of find somebody in your own hometown. So it would be a peripheral to Abacus, but it would eventually plug in. So we talk about some of these other areas, these other traction pieces. So if you have a file, these are becoming more and more common, is that you can do a file to print. So STL files, as an example, are a 3D printed file. You can get a STL file for $2-3 of different parts for a remote control car, or new cases for whatever it is, even camera cases, things like that. You can make as complicated or non-complicated as you want. They even do scenery for like model trains and things like that. So you can buy these files, and they're just digital files. A lot of people who want these things don't actually have 3D printers. They want the file, but they don't have a 3D printer. So what 3D Local is you can go on there and you can say, I have this file, it's this size, it's of this, I need somebody to 3D print this for me. And so what that does is you enter in your zip code, and you can find a person in your zip code who has a 3D printer who can print that file for you for like $10. It's just purely on
That's
that
awesome.
gig where, hey, all right, I'm not even doing the modeling. I'm literally just loading it into my 3D printer or into my laser for Laser Local, and I'm cutting it out for you because I have the equipment. You have the file, I have the equipment, and we'll do. So we talk about some of the other ways that we can do this is by plugging services like that into Abacus. So once you learn how to do something, you can either be of service to somebody else, or have something printed for you. If you've learned the modeling, you can, but you don't have the printer, and vice versa.
Wow. Wow, that's great. Additive manufacturing, especially like on a retail level, is a totally new industry. Like the fact that you can now, have a 3D printer in your home and make pretty much whatever object you want. It's a new idea, but I think that's definitely a burgeoning economy. Because before it was like you had to have this huge room size machine or whatever to 3D print something, and it was 100, 200, 300, $500,000 machine, and now you can buy one for a couple $1,000 and make some pretty cool stuff.
Oh, not even. You can buy a 3D printer for a couple hundred now.
Wow.
And so what's really cool, and again, I just got back this morning. I was over at Kip's house, one of my buddies who still works at that spaceship factory. I just bought a brand new Honda CRV, and the camera on the back it's so close to the lip of the back of the car that whenever it rains, which is constantly out here in the Pacific Northwest, not today though, for reasons.
Yeah, it's a nice day.
Yeah. Whatever reason, like the camera gets drips of water on it, and so like it's not protected or anything, and I can't see out the back. When I put it in reverse, I'm looking through it, and I'm going, they look like smudges. A person or a dog could run out, and it seemed like a safety issue. So I went to Kips this morning, and this is the value of like knowing people who do this and then getting to know that skill, because this will become much more common, what I'm about to describe, which is I went over there, we took some measurements, and he created a shroud for me that I could put over there. I would literally just stick it onto the camera, and it's a little lip that goes over it that won't let rain get on it. And he's loading it into his 3D printer. I have an FDM printer upstairs. I'll go do it also to see if we can get two different types of materials. But that is something I'm just going to stick up. That is one real world thing where it's like, you know what I need? I need this, this, and this. And you can actually, if you have the skill to do it, you can create it and produce it right in your own home, which is amazing. But again, it took Kip 9 minutes to basically model that out. It's going to take about 45 minutes to print. Bada boom, bada bing.
Wow.
Your own part. And then think about what that does to the patent world also.
Yeah.
You've got all these clever solutions to things. You can patent those.
That's insane. Yeah, one use case I've seen there, like let's say you drive an older vehicle, just because, like me, my car is like basically from the 90s, just because I'm not a very materialistic guy, and I've never really wanted to buy a new car. But anyway, so I might have a part that's not manufactured anymore, some like knick-knack interior, like something to like your interior vent or something, something simple like that. It's like, yeah, this vent won't work anymore because it's broken, just 3D print something like that. You don't have to go find it somewhere online. And
exactly. And you don't have to pay anything for it. If you've already got all this set up, I mean, you know that finding custom parts is expensive. You can pay $50 for just a tiny little thing. You're like, well, this is stupid, but it hasn't been produced since the 70s.
Right.
So all you need is a pair of calipers to take measurements, and just the software. And every like 3D modeling software now is free. I mean, you can get a Blender account for free.
Yeah.
And just the machines, like I said, it's a couple $100, but I mean, my machine has paid for itself over and over and over again. So it's just, yeah, it's the consumer-facing side of Abacus is definitely all about showing people how this stuff is relevant to your life. Learning these skills, learning how to do 3D modeling, and either having a 3D printer or knowing somebody that has a 3D printer, or using something like 3D Local. You can actually apply that and bring it into your life and find real solutions to little things around the house. My wife just moved her chair out just before this interview. The casters on it, I laser cut. I also have a laser cutter. Again, I told you I lost all my fear, so I went out and I got everything that I wanted. And
went all in.
Stolen everything. And I her new casters, instead of throwing that chair out, and she loves that chair, instead of throwing it out or replacing it, we just fixed it. And I was able to do these really cool little cups for the legs, and then attach a caster to the bottom of them, and she gets to continue to use that chair now. So
there's so many use cases. The utility of a 3D printer, you almost can't put a price on it, sounds like.
Yeah. No, well, and I'm even looking the 20-year down the road plan for Abacus is to produce an actual machine that uses 3 different types of technologies all in one, which would be vacuum forming, 3D printing, and laser cutting. And basically, you could produce anything that you needed for your household. Instead of going out and buying it, you simply download a file and then you make it at home, and the machine would do all of that for you. So that's way future, way in the future. I call it the Omnicus, but it is something that I'm going to be looking into as Abacus builds up and moves forward.
Sure. So let's talk about the marketplace developing. Where do you see Abacus in terms of like maturity level of the company? 10 years. In terms of the marketplace and kind of that your own microeconomy developing?
I see that right now we're already getting a lot more traction on corporate events. So we've got 3 big companies looking at buying these purchasing these listings, and reserving time with each of these suppliers. I kind of see that taking off a little bit, and over this year, I think 2021 is going to be a great year. I see that happening. It's going to take off, and then the consumer-facing side will be a little bit challenging, but getting people on that. I think in 10 years, I'd really like to see it standing up all on its own. I'd like to have, many employees at that point help me do all this. But I see, and I alluded to it a little bit, or I hinted at it, moving on into an actual product. I think that products are hard to start with. The tech corporation is easier to, I don't want to say it's easier, it's not easy, but it's definitely, there's no overhead, right? You're not producing something. You don't have a factory that you're doing all this. You can actually build a tech company from your computer at home. Building a company that produces a machine, which is where I want to go eventually, that's going to take a lot more. But I do see Abacus. Abacus is the doing business as portion. The corporation is actually called American Virtual Makerspace, and I want to stay a little bit true to that by producing a machine that it kind of is a replicator, sort of that Jetsons era replicator, that future thing that you've seen. Or what I would consider the precursor to the Star Wars or a Star Trek replicator, where something just appears. Well, first it has to be built, right? We got to go through this phase, and I want to build the machine that builds that. I want to build the machine that uses those different manufacturing techniques to create stuff that you just need in your house every day. And so that's kind of where I see us in 10 years, is actually starting to work on a real machine. And I picture it very much like a washer or dryer. It would be a major appliance in your home. But if you can produce 85% of the stuff that you go out and you buy from Lowe's or Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond, all these little knickknacks and shelves and extra things, if you can produce those at home, think about what kind of an impact that would have on the environment. You don't have to ship these products from China. You don't have to produce, the factories don't need to make them anymore in these big central factories. You can actually have decentralized manufacturing at home. That's what I want Abacus to get into in 10 years.
Yeah, that's great. And I think decentralization is kind of where a lot of things are heading. I mean, you see it heading there with some finance stuff with blockchain and cryptocurrency, and you're just kind of seeing at least the demand for decentralization taking place, whether out of necessity or out of convenience. And so I think you're hitting it right on the head there. So kind of wrapping up here, if you could warn a new startup founder about one thing when starting their company, what would it be?
Don't get stuck on start. This is the thinking myself into a hole has always been an issue up until recently, and I think a lot of it had to do with me getting canned at that spaceship factory. Don't get stuck on start. The most important step is starting. Just get started. And you don't have to waste money, and you don't have to be wasteful, but you got to get started. So the longer time people spend doing, like, you have to do, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things here about, you've got to do your business validation, you got to make sure there's a market, you have to do some research. But if it's been months and months and you're still researching, then you're stuck on start. You're not actually starting. The first step is starting. And sometimes you don't know. For me, I can't speak for anybody else. For me, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was doing something anyway. And then what happens is you just learn over time, and you just get better and better at it. And I'd love to be able to look backward and go, I could have saved all this money, or I could have saved all this time. And the truth is, you really can't. A lot of times you can't. You just have to start doing it. Otherwise, you're never going to get started. You're always going to get stuck going, oh my God, I just wasted $100. Well, did you learn something from it? Take that. There is no waste. And my mental attitude is there really is no waste. There's no waste of time, and there's no waste of money. I'm still early on in my career as a startup entrepreneur, though, so I might might eat my own words at some point. But I can tell you that getting stuck up here is is the biggest hazard. Got to get started.
Word to the wise, man.
Yep.
I would agree. I mean, me personally, like a lot of things, it's easy to overthink and research, and you have Google at your disposal, and you're reading these articles, and you're looking here and you're looking there, and what if I did this? And all along, you haven't even done anything yet. Like you gotta go. You gotta get started. You gotta do something.
Right.
Start making things happen.
Yep.
Well, cool. So last question for you: what would you do if Abacus fails? If it doesn't go according to plan, what would you do?
I'd do something else. This has come up before. My wife and I have talked about it. My parents still ask me questions about this, and they're like, "Well, what if it tanks? What if this doesn't work? Are you going to go out and find like a real job, right? Because I mean, everybody is like, go back to that 9-to-5 job, and I can tell you, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to go back to a 9-to-5 job. After doing this and having having tasted starting to create something on my own, I would just pivot. If I have to do a 180 and change completely what we're doing, I would do it. If I need to change the name, if I need to change branding, if I need to do all this, if I need to follow a completely different idea, I'll do that. But I'm not going to go back to the old way. And I think I want to create something. I want to create something. I want to create something of value, and I want to be of service to a lot of people. And the way to do that is kind of by taking this idea and actually building the idea and building it up into something real. I don't think I can ever go back to just working a 9-to-5 job, where I'm just a part of a small team. It's not an ego-filling proposition for me. I don't really care to be the leader of anything. I just want to build something cool that a lot of people can use. And I don't think I can ever go back. So I would just figure something else out and start something new.
Hey, yeah, totally hear you there, man. Once you kind of become self-employed or start a business, it kind of ruins the idea of ever getting a job, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's just not the same.
right.
Well, hey, Steve, appreciate you coming on and telling us about Abacus.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll talk later.
All right, it sounds great, Micah. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, man.